In today's rapidly evolving workplace, organizations are discovering that employee recognition isn't just a nice-to-have program. It's a strategic imperative that drives measurable business results. Our research at Brandon Hall Group consistently shows that organizations with strong recognition cultures are 3 times more likely to see increased employee retention and 2.5 times more likely to see increased engagement. But here's what's truly compelling. Recognition programs now generate insights that can transform how organizations understand their people, identify hidden talent, and make strategic decisions about their workforce. The recognition renaissance we're witnessing goes far beyond making employees feel appreciated. Forward-thinking companies are leveraging recognition data as continuous listening post that captures organizations' culture in real time, identifies emerging skills, and detects early signs of burnout, even predicts future innovative leaders. When implemented strategically, recognition becomes a data goldmine that provides authentic, unbiased insights into what's really happening within an organization. Insights that traditionally performance management systems simply cannot capture. Hi, I'm David Forry, Senior Vice President at Brandon Hall Group, and in this episode of Excellence at Work, you'll be watching an interview I conducted with Jesse Harriott at Workhuman Live 2025. Jesse serves as head of analytics and executive director of Workhuman IQ, where he leads the team responsible for unlocking strategic insights from recognition data. With his unique background combining psychology and advanced data science, Jesse has spent 20 years turning data into insights and assets for high-growth technology companies. He's advised organizations ranging from the White House to the Federal Reserve on analytics and labor market issues, and previously served as Chief Analytics Officer, Constant Contact, and Chief Knowledge Officer at Monster Worldwide. In our conversation, you'll discover how Workhuman's human intelligence platform uses AI to transform individual recognition moments into collective organizational intelligence. Jesse will walk you through fascinating examples of how recognition data reveals demonstrated skills that traditional assessments miss, and how AI can identify unconscious bias in workplace communications, and how these insights are being used to predict the future leaders and innovators within organizations. You'll also hear about groundbreaking applications like using recognition patterns to detect burnout risk and creating dynamic skills profiles based on authentic peer feedback rather than self-reporting capabilities. This interview was recorded at Workhuman Live 2025 in front of an audience of HR leaders and analysts, giving you a front row seat to one of the most innovative approaches to talent analytics happening in the market today. So let's dive in.
Welcome to the Excellence at Work podcast, where we explore the strategies and best practices that drive business success. I'm Rachel Cook, COO of Brandon Hall Group and the host of our podcast, along with members of our executive team. In each episode, we'll dive into the latest trends, insights, and real-world examples from some of the most exciting leaders from organizations worldwide. Be part of our journey and learn from the best as we discuss innovative approaches and cutting-edge technologies for talent management, learning and development, leadership, diversity and inclusion, and more.
It's good to spend some time with everyone today. My name is Jesse Harriott, and I lead data science and AI for Workhuman. So my focus is around how do we take all that information that is in the Workhuman platform and turn it into insights and value that are going to help our customers and really inform the industry.
Perfect. So yesterday I got a little behind the scenes look at some of the data science that Jesse and his team are working on. And we're going to talk a little bit about it today. And Jesse's going to share some more information about Workhuman IQ. As both a psychologist and an analytics leader, how are you seeing the intersection of human psychology and data science reshaping our understanding of recognition? And of course, what metrics have proved to be most compelling?
Yeah, that's a great question, and really kind of encapsulates why I joined Workhuman, because it really is an opportunity to take this concept, the psychological concept of motivation, which is we all as humans have a core need to be appreciated, to feel part of the group, to be validated, but it doesn't happen in work as much as it might happen in other parts of our lives. And so really the workplace is one area where it's still a frontier for many companies to kind of build that at scale. And so with Workhuman, obviously, we're doing that for some of the largest, most highly matrix companies around the globe. And we're helping them set up an environment where there's a culture of recognition, where it becomes part of a business process that people are always thinking about, to be on the lookout for examples of high performance, examples of what excellence looks like. And then that translates into data and proof points that, really have a halo effect. I mean, it starts with one person thanking another, but then that has a halo effect to teams, to the way people view themselves inside the organization, to the discretionary effort that they're going to put into their job, to the likelihood that they'll refer someone into the company. All of these proof points that go from talent insights all the way to business results.
That's great. And our research, we've looked at some of those points, and what we found is for effective recognition, it must be a few things: performance-based, timely, inclusive, frequent, authentic, and data-driven. So from your perspective, which area do you think is most effective in ensuring recognition is done properly?
Yeah, I mean, you highlighted a lot of important areas. I mean, to me, the most important is the authenticity. If you have a recognition program that's automated, gamified, not grounded in authentic moments of human connection, it will fall flat. Certainly a lot of other things matter too. We have three concepts that we think about at Workhuman. One is the reach. So what % of employees are giving or receiving recognition? The frequency. So how often are people giving and receiving recognition? It'd surprise you, but there's some managers that think, hey, it's the holiday time, I'm going to recognize my team and I'm done for recognition. But you need to have every 45 days or so some form of recognition to be at the most optimal level. And then the third is the value. So putting an economic value behind it is critical as well, to calibrate the contribution that somebody is making to the company.
And sitting in a couple of sessions already today, I like how you highlight some of the speakers, not only how many recognition moments that they've given, but also they received. And seeing that these speakers, for the most part at this conference, have given more recognition moments than they've received. And I think that really talks to the impact of recognition that you've received personally. So I'm glad you brought that up. And then also you mentioned how far things are reaching. And I think that gets into some of the data science that you and your team are working on. You really have a beautiful model of looking at that cloud of how everything is going back and forth. So can you explain how Workhuman's platform identifies skills through some of those natural language in those recognition moments?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, you think about those recognition moments, like Eric pointed out this morning, there's a lot of depth of language in those messages. And people aren't always explicitly saying you're skilled at X, Y, or Z, but the language they use can be detected and you can filter out some of those skills. And I think when we think about the skills market right now, so many vendors are basically saying, hey, you employee, tell us what your skills are. Just raise your hand, you have a skill. Maybe there's some manager validation. Maybe there's an inference from a job title or something like that. But what we believe that recognition is a great complement to other sources, because it's performance in action. It's employees showing up to work, doing something well, and then being recognized by peers, by colleagues, by others. And when that happens at scale, you really can start to detect skills, biases, values, behaviors, all types of different areas using the AI.
Absolutely. So for organizations that are trying to become more of a skills-based, what advantages might this recognition-based approach offer over the traditional skills inventories that are on the market? And how might that complement other skills identification methods?
Yeah, I mean, there's no one data source that's going to do everything, but recognition is that unique, authentic moment of performance in action that's validated by your peers. It's in a social feed, so other people see it, have a chance to pile on and vote. And so in addition to other sources out there like certification or training or, performance reviews, this is a different lens because it is organic. It is happening at the pace of business. So it's happening also in real time. A lot of the skills inventories that are out there, they can go stale because maybe you had a skill 5 years ago or 6 months ago, But if you're not using that and practicing that and living that in your day-to-day work, that may change. And so having that recognition data where it's in the real time of business is also one of the advantages too.
I think Eric touched on a lot of those points, and I've seen some of those points with Workhuman IQ, identifying those skills. I even like how, they're a little bit color coded, at least
Right.
for us to look at and identify some of those moments that really matter, which is really fascinating. And I know that you also have some AI tools in there to help people write better.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about the prompting that goes on to help people make sure they're giving some of those authentic moments that you spoke about and some other key indicators that they should hit?
Yeah, I mean, giving recognition, especially if you haven't done it before, there's a vulnerability moment there, right? There's a moment of reflection where you have to write something to share with someone else, and how it's going to be perceived can create some agita sometimes for people, especially if they're not used to it. And so we take that teachable moment and we give the users ways, AI tools that help them write a better message, to make the message impactful, to make the message specific, to make the message talk about how it makes you feel, in addition to a teachable moment around bias, where maybe you have an opportunity to look at the language and make sure that it's not going to come across in a way you don't intend. As an example, like a real common one that can happen a lot is somebody will recognize someone for working over the weekend or taking their holiday time to finish something that was due, and we think we're saying something positive, but really that's creating an unrealistic cultural expectation that what good looks like at this company is that you're working on weekends all the time, right? Which is not a good way to be. Or a teachable moment of, hey, you just joined the company, you're 2 years out of school, I can't believe the way you handled that project. It's a little undermining, right? Because the fact that they're 2 years out of school doesn't really matter. It's how did they perform and what contribution did they make. So using recognition in the form of that teachable moment and combined with AI really enriches the information that you get, makes it more authentic.
I think you've spoken previously about it's not so much flagging the comments to tell people they're doing it wrong, but it's teachable moments to help them be better. And you're seeing some of those results outside of the Workhuman platform too,
Mm-hmm.
where people that are giving these recognition moments are actually performing better and using more inclusive words.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, in addition to thinking about bias, even the language that's in the content of the message, like we have a lot of manufacturing clients where safety, right, total recordable injury rate is an important business outcome for them. And we've seen that when we look at the language inside of recognition that mentions, when those awards mention proactive safety things that somebody does, like before there's a safety incident, they notice something and they can change something, that those recognition moments lead to better performance of safety for a plant. And so not only is there the inclusion aspect of it and making the language more intentional, the language can be powerful and lead to those business outcomes as well.
I hope I can quote you on this, because yesterday I heard you say something about 70% of skills can actually be seen in these recognition moments, skills that I attain because my colleagues, my boss, or others inside the organization have said about me. Can you talk about like the future, what might be next for like the next 3 to 5 years about some of these skills-based understandings?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen the space of recognition kind of go from a nice to have that companies think about to really something that every company has to have some sort of strategy around. It's an expectation. So I think in the future, as we have data sources that are rich about culture, I think the industry will evolve into more of almost like a culture operating system. So you'll be able to understand subtle signals about your workforce that you aren't able to understand readily now. So turnover risk, burnout indicators, collaboration styles, working styles, all of these things that are really hard for companies to get their head around at scale. Certainly you might know it for the 4 or 5 people that you're working with on a daily basis, but that I think is the future. So really looking at some of those signals that are hard for people to see at scale, recognition data being able to do that for them.
I don't see a lot of people in the industry thinking that far ahead when it comes to recognition. But what advice would you give organizations that want to move beyond that transactional recognition to something more strategic for the business?
Yeah, I mean, I think, when we think about a recognition journey, at the far end of it would be an ad hoc recognition program that's inconsistent, et cetera. I think to move towards, really more of a human intelligence recognition system, the core principle is about empowering the employees. So you have to create that sense of recognition is something important. It's something we value. It's something we expect when you come to work. That's something you need to be on the lookout for, and it becomes part of the culture. So it really starts with empowering employees, and then organically the culture will start to develop, create, and build a heartbeat of its own. So for companies that want to move beyond the tactical, it's really about creating that sense of permission for employees to recognize one another. That's most important.
Having been able to sit in on a couple of sessions already today and some yesterday, I really see that in the customer stories that we're hearing and how much can come back to the organization from investing in their people. I think the ROI data that we're seeing from Brandon Hall Group is certainly insightful, that recognition moments are really changing how we understand the workplace dynamics. But Jesse, as we wrap up, is there key messages that you would like to say to the live audience here?
Yeah, I mean, I think some key points to consider is, yes, there's going to be ROI and recognition, but you should still always be very critical of what that data is telling you and question it. So, for example, some of our most successful clients are looking at recognition data along with other information sources. So not just relying on recognition data alone to tell the story, but recognition data in combination with operational metrics, with other data that HR has at their fingertips. That can start to elevate the role that recognition really does have in driving business outcomes in a very credible way. So it's to think about recognition as part of your culture driving ecosystem, but always continue to be skeptical and make sure you're pushing the organization to look holistically at that workforce.
Perfect. I don't know if any of the audience wants to have any particular questions, but I threw in some candy bag alternates of some questions that I can ask you if you don't mind.
Sure.
I know we didn't get into it today, but you've advised the White House and Federal Reserve on labor market issues. How does some of those macro perspectives inform your work on recognition at the organizational level?
Yeah, I mean, I think having done that in a previous life, I think part of what it has given me is a broad perspective that the labor market, the workforce, it's so multidimensional and so complex, right? When we think about workers that are on the ground, never touching a computer or a laptop, to somebody who is in an office all the time, there's all kinds of roles and people and desires in the workforce. And so there is no one size fits all type of solution. And so that's why, part of why I believe in Workhuman, where we're setting up an organic system where people get to recognize one another. And if you're on the floor of the factory, you know what good looks like for the person you're working next to. The person 7 layers up in management may not know that, right? So the traditional top-down strategic initiatives for HR needs to be rethought to more of organic, ground-up type of initiatives like recognition. So giving that lens of complexity to the labor force is part of what I've gained from doing some of that work. Okay,
great. So what have been some of the most surprising insights that you've seen while you're analyzing the data of recognition?
I mean, there are a lot. It's a fun job to be able to study kind of that psychology and, see some of the data science as well. I think one is that if you ask any employee, would you rather have $500 in a recognition moment now, or would you rather have smaller recognition moments spread out over 6 months? Every one of you will say, just give me the $500. That's what I would prefer. But when you study the actual impact that has, the recognition moments spread out into small, bite-sized, micro award moments is much more impactful. So just that idea of what people say they want and what actually will drive the business results sometimes can be disconnected.
And I think there's some numbers that your team has shared about how many times somebody needs to be recognized over the course of the year and how that impacts things like turnover, and especially with new hires and things like that as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, recognition in the first 90 days of joining a company makes a huge difference in the trajectory and the outcome of that employee. Also, when we think about recognition, it has a decay, just like, you might see an advertisement in the marketplace. It's only going to last or have an impact on you for, a certain period of time. 45 days is kind of the average impact. So having a recognition moment 6 to 8 times a year is sort of the sweet spot of what we see in the optimal program.
Now, shifting gears a little bit, because Workhuman is a global organization, how does Workhuman account for some of the cultural differences in recognition and how that's given and received?
Yeah, the cultural differences is fascinating, right? Because every country has a different way they think about recognition. Like in many Asian cultures, it's not about individual performance and achievement. It's about what does the team do? And the success is owned by the team, and it would be almost uncomfortable to talk about individual performance and spotlight an individual. So focusing on team awards for cultures where that's a key factor. Language also varies quite a bit. So some cultures have very short to the point recognition, and other cultures are longer with more, verbose language. So just understanding those cultural differences. But once again, if it's organic and employees are able to give and receive to one another on their own when they see things happening, they'll bring those cultural differences to the program, and almost it'll be embedded inside the data itself already.
Well, Jesse, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me and share with the audience. Final thoughts?
Yeah, I think final thoughts is, the world of AI certainly is changing a lot of how we think about work. And for me, I have more optimism, at least in the short term, in terms of I think we're going to see improved productivity and improved insights that we haven't been able to see before, especially around some of these cultural aspects of work. So I'm looking forward to it. I think optimism would be my final thought.
Thank you, Jesse.
Yep, you're welcome.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Excellence at Work. I hope Jesse's insights have given you a new perspective on the strategic potential of recognition data and how AI can enhance rather than replace human judgment and talent decisions. The transformation of recognition from a simple thank you mechanism into a comprehensive source of organizational intelligence represents one of the most exciting developments in HR analytics today. As Jesse demonstrated, when organizations have enough authentic data, they can truly see the big picture of their talent landscape. If you found this conversation valuable, please subscribe to our Excellence at Work podcast and share it with your HR and talent management colleagues. You can find more of our research and insights at brandonhall.com, including our upcoming recognition research and our annual HCM Excellence Awards program. For Brandon Hall Group, this is David Forry. Until next time, keep striving for excellence at work.